These two pieces here are more representative of that new look silhouette where you had the nipped in waist, you had the really full skirts, you had a more lavish use of fabric, representative of a more exuberant silhouette that came in after the war years. This black faille, it's a coat dress as opposed to a coat. The striking thing about this is really the cut on this thing. It's really interesting to see. It has the princess line here, then you have the second dart here. When you're working with an extreme silhouette like the 40s, late 40s silhouette, the new look, you had a full bust and you had a narrow waist. So a lot of times they had to use more than one dart to distribute the shaping. So you have this dart here, the side dart here, and then it's cut in different gores. Now, working with this fabric, which is a really heavy faille, is kind of tricky because the collar itself is really nicely done. As you can see here, it's favored nicely so that the seam actually rolls towards the back, which is something that you really see on these garments. And as you can see here, the undercollar is cut with the center back seam, which is pretty typical on this sort of thing. Cutting it so that you have a seam, let you position it onto the fabric so that all the grain lines match so that the collar will actually lie flat. It has a really sweet detail on the cuff. As you can see here, it has working buttonholes on the cuff. This is how you can tell it's a couture piece as opposed to a ready-to-wear piece, because in ready-to-wear pieces, they tend to have just a machine buttonhole and then they just sew the button on. But having it so that it works, there are times that people, what they would do is they would have one undone, and what that tells you is that you can afford a couture piece. When you have a garment like this, you have what are called French tacks or swing tacks that anchor the lining to the garment. This is about 2 inches long. It's either done with a thread chain or it's done with a thread bar and a buttonhole stitch. What this does is it keeps the lining in position so that it doesn't move too far away, but it doesn't limit the range of motion on the lining. They finished the hem on the lining. They have this extra strip of fabric and they've whip stitched the edge of the lining to that. So they've hemmed it from this side. The whip stitch actually catches the lining fabric. It appears to be a very simple piece, but it's really actually very beautifully done.